Welcome back to School Attendance Beyond the Percentage, the podcast where we explore the people, ideas and actions that sit behind the data and drive real change in how we understand student attendance. I'm your host, Melissa Warwick from A-Star Attendance Solutions, and in this episode we're looking at what really keeps students connected to school. There's some deep questions that we're going to consider. Do our students feel like they belong? Are we reaching the right young people with the right support? And are we truly working with families and communities to make lasting, meaningful connections? Here to talk about this are two passionate voices from Authentic Education, Matt Britt, Chief Education Officer, and Gemma Genco, Assistant Director of Safeguarding Attendance. Matt, Gemma, welcome. It's great to have you with us.
Thank you.
So let's start with the foundation, which is belonging. There's a well-known quote that says, students don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And that's really the essence of belonging. It's about feeling seen, valued, and connected. So belonging doesn't happen by accident. We know it's intentionally cultivated. So how do you approach building a sense of belonging across all of your schools? And how do you see this as essential to improving attendance?
I think each school has its own approach, but I think it's definitely linked to the school's values, and it's the language that we use and the positivity we have towards our children. Because for some children, their key adults, their teachers, they're their real cheerleaders in their lives. So we have to kind of make that connection and make them belong. We ultimately want children to attend because they're going to get this great teaching and learning experience, this great social experience, new opportunities that they wouldn't have otherwise. So we need to know what we can do to bring in the children. Yeah. It's ultimately knowing our children, really knowing our children, their families, how we have that knowledge and understanding of the ebbs and flows of the community, responding to those, preempting what might happen and really supporting them and building that into the values and culture of our school. Yeah. It has to be something that everybody takes on board, and it's not just your form tutor or the receptionist, it's everyone, it's across the board.
Definitely. And kind of from a leadership perspective, how do you make sure that belonging isn't just a statement, but something that's actually built into everyday practice?
I think our values as a trust are about being courageous, about being innovative in order to be excellent. And so for that to happen, everybody has sort of worked together to shape an approach to positive relationships and to developing that sense of belonging. It's woven in through appraisal, it's woven in through everything we do. It's a message. Our central team, through Gemma and all our other central team, go out into each of the academies and are present to help them bring that to life. And I think we had, in the early days of our trust working together, we had issues around things like where strategies were competing with each other and the sense of belonging was eroded by the approach. So if you want to improve standards, people drive at, say, uniform. But if the first thing that happens is that a vulnerable child walks into a school in the morning having dragged themselves from who knows what, got themselves in, they're 10 minutes late, somebody putting them immediately into isolation for wearing the wrong tie or the wrong shoes, or somebody berating them for being 10 minutes late isn't helping in that collective effort to help them connect and feel belonging. And that is what I think our staff over the course of our time working together have understood, and it's made a big difference, and it's why we're now getting inroads.
I think there's something about the student voice as well, that it's their school. They want to have a say in how the schools run, what works for them, what doesn't. And I think the stronger the student voice is, they're going to feel much more part of that community.
Well, they're feeling heard, aren't they? And they're helping shape kind of the culture and what the school looks like really as well. So once you've laid that foundation for belonging, the next step is really recognising that not every student needs the same support as well, and that will look different depending on the students that we're working with. And that's where targeted intervention really comes in. So not those blanket solutions, but intentional, tailored support that meets students actually where they currently are as well. So how do you identify students or groups that need that more targeted intervention, and what does that support look like?
So our teams have a huge data profile. One of the things that's the benefit of working with A-Star Attendance has been that absolute web of information that connects around the child to really highlight what their needs are and to push them forward. And our leadership teams use that in discussion with the attendance teams and the welfare teams to make sure that we can see the whole child, not just this part of the child. And then from that, it's the work that you do, Gemma, is with your team and into the academies, is to make sure that that then connects further.
And there will be some approaches that will fit for a handful of students and not just an individual, so you can tailor it more broadly. And obviously there are some where it's literally just to that individual child. So it is about seeing that child and beyond that child, like the family, what the circumstances around that family. So if we can work, teams around the child but also around the family, that's a really big
really important.
impact,
It really is. And I think, have you got any examples, really? Our listeners will always say, I need some tangible examples, things that I can take into my school, really. So have you got any examples of any creative or student-centred interventions that you've put in place where something that you've done has really helped to improve attendance, whether it be for that individual or for a group?
We have a few things. One that's a fairly recent project. One of our secondaries has introduced a re-engagement project.
Okay.
So they've identified, using their data, a handful of year 11 pupils. Obviously, it's a really important year for them. We need them in as much as possible. And their issues are around EBSA and school avoidance. So we've put in place a programme where it's out in the community. Our flow has gone out, done a lot of work with the background, with the families. This might work for you. What do you think about this approach? Let's get you in. They're starting off with, there's a mix. So those that will just do online tutoring, maths, English to start with, but they also have a face-to-face tutors, whichever works best. So for 2 weeks in the community centre, then they're bringing them back on site to do the same programme, meeting them with their pastoral workers, their support, any kind of soft landings, whatever they might need when they reintegrate back into the school. But it's a really slow process. If it doesn't work in 6 weeks, it can be extended.
Okay.
So it's kind of at that young person's
Those
pace.
steps.
So hopefully that will reintegrate them back into school in a really important year. And we've worked with a resilience reps program, grassroots. They've come in and they've done quite a lot of work, because a lot of the teachers and the staff in school say children just don't have resilience. So we kind of do peer support program where they're taught around things like mental health and well-being and how to look after yourself and to identify other children who may be struggling a little bit. So there's a lot of peer supports. We've had those programs and they've been quite successful in supporting each other, because perhaps you don't always want to talk to your grown-ups, it's nice to get your peer, and if they're really worried, they know that they have to kind of report it. But
absolutely.
So
that's really good. And
there's wider work going on across the academies. So where they've identified bands of students who might need different approaches, we've done things like look at engagement focus around horticulture, or we've got a boxing engagement project going on in some of our academies as an extra to connect with students, for whom that is something that they can really focus around. We've also got some of our academies send minibuses out to collect the hard to reach and the vulnerable, because sometimes getting out and being there on their doorstep is a much better way of coercing them back into that pattern of coming to school. And also, I think one of the things I've seen at a couple of the academies is the discussion with students about their data. So it's really, talking to them about the fact that every Friday or Monday they're not in. Why is that? And actually opening that data discussion with the student so that we can actually start to break those barriers, because so much had sat after COVID unaddressed and just accepted that when we began this work, we had to break the back of that apathy and find cleverer ways to connect.
Yeah, definitely. And I think where students, where they feel seen and heard, they then start to feel valued and they feel like they belong. So if you're noticing that the student is absent every Friday, yes, you're getting that information through the data, but then that forms the discussions, doesn't it, with the students.
And we have to start this work much sooner, so that when they're transitioning from 6 to 7, we now get data on their attendance beforehand, so we can be contacting those parents saying, come in, have a little look at the school, let's have a supported visit. And equally for students who've been with us for a while, we'll go, right, this student has got problems at home. Let's send the postcard in the summer. Hope you're going, having a great summer. Can't wait to see you in September. So all of those little draws to say, we're still thinking about you. Can't wait to see you. So any ways to draw them in.
Absolutely. And again, feel valued and that they belong. I think there was once, I was speaking to someone once and they said the only period of time where a student can maybe feel like they don't belong is between that transition between year 6 and year 7, because they've left one school and they haven't yet started their new skill. So those touch points are really important.
Schools, they did a transition project, an art project. So they brought in their year 6s coming up, and they did a whole art project with them. So when they arrived, they could have their pictures of that they'd created on that day up on the wall, so they could walk through and see those elements.
That's nice.
So,
Dead familiar as well, isn't it? Yeah. So I think for me, one of the biggest superpowers of education, if you want to put it that, is the partnerships that we make with families and the communities as well. Because attendance, it's not just a school issue. We know that. It's something that's lived at home. It's something that's influenced by the community, and it's shaped by relationships. So how do you approach building trust with families, especially when maybe attendance is became a source of tension or challenge?
We've got this. It's a two-pronged response, really. I think there's the work that we do, which Gemma will talk about, with families and where we've had to find those routes in to connect. But I think for us also, we're looking beyond that to the next phase. And for us, our next phase is to look at engagement hubs and to see what can we do, knowing the context now for the community. So, for example, one of our schools, All Saints, is in Weymouth. And so it's a coastal location. There's lots of seasonal work. The All Saints is really beautifully located in partnership with our trust and with the Diocese of Salisbury. So we've been able to work because they'll have a chaplain, which is a fantastic provision. So the chaplain will be based in the new community hub, but we're going to make it a cafe as well because they've got a fantastic catering team in the academy. And what we want to do is to make sure that all of our students in that hub have an opportunity to get food hygiene training, so that when jobs become available in Weymouth in seasonal work, All Saints students are at the forefront of that, so they can become immediately inducted into the world of work and employment. And it's just thinking smarter to try and take that engagement and that connection to the next level, which will break the barriers for those hard to reach families, because those are things that will connect with them. And in that area, there is no local coffee shop or cafe. It's a unique one in this day and age, but they don't. And so if we can put one on site and have it open every day and the students staff it and prepare for it, it will then mean that the community are drawn into us. So it's just thinking beyond what we're doing right now, but you've done lots of work already with schools to reach those families and break that.
Yeah, I think in primaries it's easier because you have parents who are naturally dropping children off, so you have opportunities to have this conversation. Schools that are doing better have their SLT, the head teacher, who know what's been going on behind the scenes and will just say, oh, how's so-and-so, just checking in, and then have those informal conversations, but shows the family that they care about their child.
Absolutely.
I think that's been really powerful.
Yeah.
Second is we've had to work harder, and a lot of the relationships are through our family liaison officers. We've introduced senior leadership calls. So they are the ones that take responsibility, particularly for our persistent, absence. They will make those phone calls. We've made some good inroads. So if a child's off for one day for sickness, we give them a call towards the end of the day. How's so-and-so feeling? Are they getting better? Will they be in tomorrow? We're looking forward to seeing them. When they come back in, it's that big welcome. One of the schools does a great rock star for the week.
Right,
So
okay.
They produce 2 students that they all lick through. Every staff member knows about whenever they see in the car. It's a high five. Nice to see you. Great to see you back. Hope you're feeling well. All the rest of it. So I think it definitely is around those connections with the families when there's, families in hardship and they can't get in. We've put taxis in place to bring their children in, or if they've had families like mum's had an operation and she can't get them to school, we'll go and collect them. So all of that additional support that's kind of not necessarily the school responsibility, but is going beyond. We are here for you and we will help. School uniforms we've supported with, materials to come to school, making allowances where we can and it's appropriate to do so. So I think it is just about listening to what they themselves need. It is difficult when there's, difficulties, and relationships can be tricky between the family and the school because there's that barrier, and it can be difficult to have those conversations,
Yeah.
and that might be where you have to work with the local authority to have those conversations almost on your behalf and to, kind of broker that relationship a little bit. But ultimately, it's those welfare visits, not just I've got eyes on the child, what's going on for that child, and bringing that back, sharing that information, having those conversations. And I think, the more that schools have those conversations about those children, the more they're going to come up with those innovative solutions.
Strategies, absolutely, and I think the more parents know that you're on their side and you want to support not only the child but the wider family, is really powerful. What are some of the biggest barriers that families face in terms of staying engaged with school, and how have you worked to reduce those barriers?
I think from my perspective, obviously previous experience of education, and so we've tried really hard to break that barrier, to offer wherever possible things in a safer space, to take away that feeling of coming into the school. So we've got like other entrances that students can use in some of our academies, so they don't have to come through the main entrance if they are late, so they're not feeling quite as intimidated as and particularly for younger families in the primaries, they've really softened their welcome and their entrance to make sure that families feel it's okay to be in and explain. They're not going to be harangued for being late. Because we don't know what their previous experience of education is, and for some of those really hard to reach families, it probably wasn't very positive. So therefore, we need to do everything we can. I think we've trained our staff in that. We've taught to them. We've set the vision with them. We've got a real focus on positive relationships, and that's the biggest thing we can do. But some of the academies go and do coffee mornings. They do training sessions to just keep bringing people in, but without it being like you're only brought in when you're in trouble.
Absolutely. And have you seen a shift in data when family school partnerships are strengthened?
Yeah, for sure. We've definitely got families. And there's nothing better as you've had a child, you've really struggled to get into school, and suddenly they start attending. There's no greater feeling. And I'll have the attendance officer going, they're in, that's great. And we'll have that phone call. And I've got a handful of children in some of the schools that I will go personally and check in on them. Hey, how are you doing? You're here. I've got one that I promised to give an art book at the end of the term and she dipped, and I said, okay, so you're going to have the A3, we're down to the A4. If you're in the rest of this week, it's the A4. So I'm popping in and I'm checking on her. And if I'm not in the school, I'm phoning the attendance lead saying, can you pop the child on the phone and have a quick chat and this sort of thing. So I think you just got to keep adapting, and you do see the data, and it is just keeping driving.
It was hard in our first year together last year because we had really low data in some of our secondary academies. Primary data rose quite quickly, but the same work in secondary didn't land as quickly, and there's more damage to unpick and to sort of tease out. And so this year we're starting to see an acceleration. So that our data started in some of the academies at 82 and 84%, and we had a huge number of persistent absence. That persistent absence has dropped, and now the attendance figures are going over the 90 for the first time in sort of the majority of our secondary settings, which is a huge achievement for us.
We know how much work goes into even just 1%, 2%. So to see that real drive over that year is fantastic.
But it's not. There are no magic bullets, and I'd love to say, after all my time in education, 34 years and a bunch of years of 25 years in headship, and now this role, I'd love to say there's a magic bullet, but there isn't. It's hard work, it's thinking, and it's creatively refocusing and looking at what context you're facing and dealing with it, and that's how you get somewhere. Because there are no quick fixes, and you've got to be reflective. Just because something worked for me in a previous setting, I can't walk into this setting and say, oh, it'll be fine. I'd been in London previously, and some of the strategies in London work really quickly and effectively in London. They have no impact at all on the coast in Weymouth and Bournemouth, and I have had to refocus and rethink.
I think it's definitely about being relentless, isn't it? And being consistent, that message is out there. So at the start of the year, you get the message, this is our expectation, we can support you. And then you reinforce at the end of the term, and you keep doing it throughout the year, and it's a little message, any opportunity, in assemblies or letters home, parents evening, just a quick flag up about attendance. So it's kind of in people's psyche all the
And,
time.
and that's like culture, isn't it?
Yeah.
It becomes part of the culture. And I think what comes across really clearly so far in this discussion is that it's not just about managing attendance, it's about shifting the whole culture in our schools. So how do you ensure that everyone in your schools, from classroom teachers to the administrative staff, how do you make sure that they see themselves as part of this work?
I think it's a bit of a mixed bag across the trust, if
Yeah.
we're being honest. Some schools have nailed it, and it is definitely a whole school approach. We've seen one school, Kinston, that's moved 7% in 3 years
Wow,
because it
yeah.
absolutely is a whole
Yeah.
school approach, and they employ all of those methods we just talked about, and they're really on it. You've got
Yeah.
other schools where some people still believe it's like the attendance team's role. But that is changing, and using the incredible amounts of data that we have, it's not just a case of mandating that attendance is on every SLT agenda. It's what is the conversation, and making sure that that falls out of the data. Also ensuring that tutors, heads of years, teachers are held accountable as well. Have you done your phone calls today? What was said? Have you uploaded the information on? And getting those teams talking, so you haven't got your SEND team over here and your attendance team there and your safeguarding there. It's about getting them talking and sharing that information and seeing the bigger picture. At the end of the day, if you haven't got children in school, there's no point in being
Well,
in school full stop.
they need to be there. And I think where you've got those, where I've been in schools and where you've got those teams together, not necessarily in the same room, but that works fantastic. But where you've got them close, them conversations are flowing all of the time, and you're kind of connecting all the dots between all of the different aspects and all of the different responsibilities that staff have.
I think there's a different approach in different settings as well. So some of the academies have really pushed like a scripted almost lineup in the morning, so that they're making sure every student gets the same level of positivity, because we had a variation in that first welcome experience, and so that's been powerfully important. We went and took some of our leaders across to academies in Greenshaw Trust over in Bristol and Gloucester, which is another trust in our southwest region, where we've seen that, and we've seen that scripted work, and it's fantastic as a way of starting. So they've brought that back. We're going out to United Learning academies shortly to look at, again, the strategies that have meant that they've embedded this approach over years in our local context. So there's always information we can learn and lessons to be learned from the very best, and we know we've got people around us like United Learning Greenshaw that are the very best in our local region, and we are learning from them. So I think it's keeping that outward look as well as ourselves, which is why we're telling you our journey, and there are some things I'm really proud of, but I know there are lots of people watching who will be doing as much, if not more. So you shouldn't feel...
That's where that sharing of best practice really comes in, and kind of, as you say before, things that work in one school might not necessarily work in another, but we've got to hear about it, we've got to try it to see if it does work for us. So how do you balance the high expectations that you've got within school with empathy, so making sure that students know that they're cared for, but also that their presence matters?
So we do rewards and incentives for children, and we say we want like 96% or we do 100% ones. But equally, it is about ensuring that we know why that child hasn't been in, and is it possible for me to so we can flex the rewards and the systems around them so that they don't feel left out. They still feel part of the community, the school community. So I think it is about understanding the child and just finding the right intervention and support for them.
Different displays as well. They work all the way through. So obviously a primary background, so I do love a good display, and I know our primary academies have got some amazing like racing car tracks for different classes. So there's loads of things that they've got, and they're all like in competition for who can have the most innovative and exciting way of. And the children, you see them standing and looking at where it is. But in the secondary academies, they've taken it on board, and they've really made that work in their house structures as well to have displays, and also messages that reinforce to students and staff and parents that this amount of days lost means this impact, and it's personalised to that academy as well. So we've spent a lot of time putting our comms out to make sure that it's seen as an authentic in partnership with that academy so that they can see that it's real for them, and it's up everywhere in our academy, so you see it, because you need to be able to see it and feel it to understand that it matters.
You do, yeah, and it's got to be visible. It's got to be talked about. We're not going to improve school attendance if it's just kind of a register check. It's got to be spoken about with the students, with their parents, with the wider community, and that's what drives that real school attendance. Matt, Gemma, thank you both so much for a really thoughtful conversation. What stands out is that you're looking far beyond the register. That is really clear. Seeing attendance not just as a number, but as a mirror of relationships, of systems, and the sense of belonging that, let's face it, every student deserves. To our listeners, here's a challenge for you this week. Who doesn't feel a sense of belonging in my classroom or my school, and why? What one group or student can I advocate for with targeted support? And what's one way that I can strengthen trust with families or agencies? Whether you're a teacher, a leader, or a community partner, I hope today's conversation has sparked some ideas and some reflections on your own context and practice. Remember, this work doesn't require perfection. It just needs intention, humility, and consistency. If you found this episode helpful, please subscribe, share it with a colleague, or leave a review. It helps us reach more educators like you who are doing the deep, innovative work. Until next time, stay curious, stay compassionate, and keep going beyond the percentage.